Dear students, at the outset, let me thank you for taking up the noblest of professions, teaching, and by going one step further in taking up the mantle of teaching people who are unable to see properly. Have you ever wondered what it is like to be blind? How do the visually impaired perform daily chores? How do they find their way around? What do they think and feel about the surroundings? What can us, the privileged ones whom God has given vision, do to help them? Well, now you can find out for yourself. Let us try and understand what is blindness and low vision, also called visual impairment. Concept: visual disability is total absence of vision or presence of partial vision. Generally, a blind person is an individual whose vision is of no practical value for the purpose of education or day-to-day activities of living. He or she is a person who is unable to perform any work for which sight is essential. Definition: let us now understand how blindness is defined. The World Health Organization (WHO) defines blindness as visual acuity of less than 3 by 60, that is the Snellen's chart, or its equivalent, which means inability to count fingers in daylight at a distance of 3 meters, to indicate less than 3 by 60 or its equivalent. Blindness is defined as visual acuity of less than 6 by 120, that is of the Snellen's chart, or corresponding visual field loss to less than 10 degrees in the better eye with best possible correction. In India, the broad definition of visual impairment as adopted in the Persons with Disabilities, Equal Opportunities, Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995, as well as under the National Program for Control of Blindness (NPCB). Blindness refers to a condition where a person suffers from any of the following conditions, namely total absence of sight, visual acuity not exceeding 6 by 60 or 20 by 200 in the better eye even after best possible correction with glasses or contact lenses. Limitation of the field of vision subtending an angle of 20 degree or worse. For deciding the blindness, the visual acuity as well as field of vision has been considered. Low vision. The Persons with Disabilities Act 1995 also recognizes low vision as a category of disability and defines it as follows. Person with low vision means a person with impairment of visual functioning even after treatment or standard refractive correction, but who uses or is potentially capable of using vision for the planning or execution of a task with appropriate assistive device. Unfortunately, this definition is incomplete as it inadvertently omits quantification of the acuity as well as the field of vision as is done in the case of the WHO definition. It is desirable to modify this definition and the following quantification should be added. Low visions are those who suffer visual acuity between 20 by 200 to 20 by 70 in the Snellen's chart or 6 by 18 to 6 by 60 in the better eye after the best possible correction or a field of vision between 20 to 30 degrees. The WHO working definition of low vision, WHO 1992, is as follows. A person with low vision is one who has impairment of visual functioning even after treatment and or standard refractive correction. and has a visual acuity of less than 6 by 18 to light perception or a visual field of less than 10 degrees from the point of fixation, but who uses or is potentially able to use vision for the planning and or execution of a task. The points FR are that there is significantly reduced vision. Visual performance is affected, but that there is still vision that can be used. This last point is very important. If there is usable vision, training to use that vision might be possible. In addition, this person is not labeled blind. Now, let us take a look at a table which shows the various categories of visual impairment. As you can see, this table examines 6 categories of visual impairment from 0 to 6. Each category also mentions the corrected visual acuity of the better eye along with the WHO standard and working definition along with the Indian definition. In this table, 6 by 60 means one can see at 6 meters what someone with standard vision could see from 60 meters away. Similarly, 3 by 60 means one can see at 3 meters what someone with standard vision could see from 60 meters away. In this table, PL means perception of light. Light perception describes the ability to perceive the difference between light and dark, or daylight and nighttime. An individual can have severely reduced vision and still be able to determine the difference between light and dark. The complete lack of light perception and form perception and is recorded as NPL, an abbreviation for no perception of light. The standard WHO definition is used in medical reports and publications and is solely based on visual acuity and does not take into account functional vision. The WHO working definition has been adopted since WHO consultation in 1992. This working definition is solely used for reporting purposes and should not be used for eligibility of services. Indian context. We shall now take a look at the visual impairment scenario in our country. The importance of the functional definition lies in the label people is given. Someone with a visual acuity of 2 by 60 can have useful vision, for example, for mobility. However, he or she will be labeled blind person. The consequence is this person is that treated as if he or she is a blind. This ignores the usable vision. There should be a difference between legal blindness and functional blindness or low vision. The WHO standard definition defines blindness as visual acuity of less than 3 by 60 in the better eye with the best possible correction as compared to that of 6 by 60 in India. The WHO functional definition, however, considers blindness starting at light perception or when a person has no usable vision. Similarly, a person with visual acuity better than 3 by 60 but equal or less than 6 by 60 is graded as blind in India, while WHO grades him as low vision. In India, a person with visual acuity less than 6 by 60 is legally blind, which enables to receive certain services and financial benefits. However, a person who is legally blind can still have useful vision to do certain tasks, as can be seen in the working definition. This refers to the fact that they still have functional vision, which is the use of vision for a particular purpose. For India or other developing countries, it is essential to maintain the legal definition of blindness at the level of visual acuity of 6 by 60, 20 by 200 in the Snellen's chart or less and field of vision of 20 degrees or less. Already the travel concessions, scholarship and other benefits are very meager. If perception of light to no perception of light is considered blindness, a large of persons who are at present availing these concessions would fall outside their eligibility criteria and thus remain bereft of their benefits. Alternatively, if these concessions are extended to all the persons with low vision in the acuity range of 6 by 18 to perception of light as defined by WHO, the appropriate government may not be able to meet the demand due to financial constraints. For India and other developing countries, it is desirable to maintain the definition of blindness as adopted in the Persons with Disability Act 1995, that is, visual acuity of 6 by 60 or less and field of vision of 20 degrees and less, and to consider all the persons in the range of acuity of 6 by 18 to 6 by 60 as persons with low vision. Thus, the recommended definition for low vision in Indian context should be low vision are those who suffer from visual acuity between 20 by 200 to 20 by 70 in the Snellen's chart, or 6 by 18 to 6 by 60 in the better eye after the best possible correction. India is now home to the world's largest number of blind people. Of the 37 million people across the globe who are blind, over 15 million are from India. What's worse, 75% of these are cases of avoidable blindness, thanks to the country's acute shortage of optometrists and donated eyes for the treatment of corneal blindness. While India needs 40,000 optometrists, it has only 8,000. On the other hand, while India needs 2.5 lakh donated eyes every year, the country's 109 eye banks, 5 in Delhi, managed to collect a maximum of just 25,000 eyes, 30% of which can't be used. According to Ajit Bharadwaj, former president of the Asia Pacific Optometrist Organization, India has 12,000 ophthalmologists who have no time to conduct blindness preventing surgeries because they are flooded with general eye checkup of patients. For India, it is vital that ophthalmologists focus on surgeries and optometrists take charge of primary eye care refractive errors like presbyopia, contact lenses, low vision aids, and vision therapies. This is how most developed countries managed to control and eliminate avoidable blindness, Bharadwaj says. Bharadwaj says 153 million people in the country require reading glasses but do not have access to them. Optometrists are eye physicians concerned with vision care, eye diseases, and prescribes eyeglasses, contact lenses, and medications to treat eye disorders. An ophthalmologist specializes in surgical care of the eyes. India has just 20 optometry schools which produce just 1,000 optometrists annually as against the 17 million people being added to the population during the same period. There is a shortage of faculty as well. There are also no regulatory laws to control the practice of optometry, even though refractive error is one of the leading causes of blindness. There is, therefore, no recognition making Indian optometrists migrate to foreign shores. Optometry is among one of the best 10 professions in US and UK. Better trained professional optometrists will immensely help India as it will give us time to concentrate on surgery, our primary specialization. Anyway, India has just one eye surgeon per 1 lakh people. At present, patients come up to us even for eye power checkup. The government also needs to standardize optometric education to maintain quality. Meanwhile, shortage of donated eyes is becoming a huge problem. Of the 15 million blind people in India, 3 million, that is 26% of whom are children, suffer due to corneal disorders. But only 10,000 corneal transplants are being done every year due to the shortage of donated eyes. The Union Health Ministry has already launched a national program to control blindness and expects to reach its blindness elimination target of 0.3% by 2015, 5 years before the WHO deadline of 2020. One-eyed person. Dear teacher, trainee, there is a controversy regarding the inclusion of one-eyed persons in the category of blindness. This definition of blindness adopted in India exclude people with impairment only in one eye from the purview of blindness. Even in medical parlance, disability is synonymous to the physical impairment and the level of such impairment has been prescribed for certifying a person to be disabled. Generally, the impairment of 40% or more is considered a handicap. As percentage of impairment in the case of a one-eyed person is only 30% according to the approved definition in a medical parlance. A person with one good eye is not a blind person. In short, a person with visual impairment of 40% or more is considered a blind person. The Committee of the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment on recommendation of standard definition of disability recommended that one-eyed person should be excluded from the other categories of visual impairment so that the facilities and concessions available to severely and profoundly visual impaired persons are not eroded. The committee, however, felt that loss of one eye would not be considered as a disqualification on medical grounds unless a particular post is of such a technical nature that it requires of a person to have the coordinated use of both eyes and three-dimensional visions. Persons with deaf blindness. Another type of impairment, deaf blindness, is a condition presenting other difficulties than those caused by deafness and blindness. It is an umbrella term which can include children and adults who may suffer from varying degrees of visual and hearing impairment, perhaps combined with learning difficulties and physical difficulties, which can cause severe communication, developmental, and educational problems. It includes children and adults who are blind and profoundly deaf, blind and severely or partially hearing, partially sighted, and profoundly deaf, partially sighted, and severely or partially hearing. Explanation of various terms. Next, let us understand the various terms of associated with visual impairment. In defining visual impairment, three aspects of vision, namely visual acuity, field of vision, and visual functioning, are considered simultaneously. In a broad sense, visual defects result into loss of clear vision, central vision, or peripheral vision. All these losses are considered by measuring visual acuity, field of vision, and level of visual functioning. Visual acuity. It refers to the ability of the eye to see details. The visual acuity for distance is measured as the maximum distance at which person can see a certain object divided by the maximum distance at which a person with normal eyesight can see the same object. Thus, a visual acuity of 6 by 60 means that the person examined cannot see at a distance of 6 meters the object which a person with normal eyesight would be able to see at 60 meters. If vision is so impaired that to see the biggest E of the E chart, the person has to come within 6 meters or even nearer, he is considered blind. The simplest method of testing visual acuity is to see whether the person can count fingers at a distance of 6 meters. Field of vision. It refers to the field which both the eyes can see in the front. The normal field of vision is 180 degrees in front of the eye. It is determined by the confrontation test in which mapping is done on a chart having concentric circles marked upon it. The simplest method of testing is to bring snapping finger from the side of the ear to the front, move it up and down and mark the position where the person can see the finger. Visual functioning. It relates in a part to the condition of the eye. It is determined by the experience, motivation, needs, and expectation of each individual in relation to whatever visual capacity available to satisfy curiosity and accomplishment activities for personal satisfaction. The visual functioning refers to the degree to which ability of a person to use vision for all daily activities. W.H.O. Disability Sequence. We will now take a look at a disability sequence as given by the World Health Organization. Generally, various terms like impairment, disability, and handicap are used interchangeably and at random. WHO has adopted a sequence underlying illness related phenomenon as disease, impairment, disability, handicap. The International Classification of Impairments, Disabilities and Handicaps ICIDH-2, which was officially adopted in 2001, proposes a common language of functioning and disability. The new terms proposed are activity limitation for disability and participation restriction for handicap. Disability will be used as an umbrella term covering all the three formats: impairment, activity limitation and participative restriction. In context of vision defects, a variety of terms, which is totally blind, stone blind, blind, partially blind, legally blind, economically blind, visually limited, low vision, partially sighted, visually handicapped, visually impaired, etc., are being used. The next table that you are about to see now explains the various terms of impairments, disabilities and handicaps as adopted by the World Health Organization. Let us now try and understand the table. The condition impairments is concerned with the abnormalities of body structure and appearances of organs or system functioning and represents disturbances at the organ level. The condition disabilities is concerned with the impairment in terms of functional performance and activities and represents disturbances at personal level. The condition handicaps is concerned with that disadvantages resulted from impairment and disabilities and represents interaction with the adaptation to individual surroundings. The visually impaired is an umbrella term used widely and understood educational context. This term is used to describe the total group of persons whose vision is affected by impairments in seeing, irrespective of the nature or extent of these. The terms refers to all the persons where vision disadvantage has resulted from impairment as well as disabilities. In case of persons who are completely without vision or who have light perception only, it is desirable to use the term blind. In all the other cases of visual defects falling in the definition, the term visually impaired should preferably be used. For the persons who do not fall in the category of blindness as defined in the Act of whose visual acuity falls between 6/18 and 6/60 in the better eye after the best possible correction, the term low vision should be used. In addition, the following should be done. Use the term blind, visual acuity 6/60 or lower only for legal reasons or to get benefits. For educational and rehabilitation purposes, all persons with a visual acuity which is lesser than 6/18 to light perception who still have useful vision should be labeled low vision, not blind, so as to encourage the use of vision. Conclusion: the categorization of visual impairment currently in use worldwide is based on the International Classification of Disease ICD-10, 10th revision, 1st and 2nd edition. This is derived from a WHO study group on the prevention of blindness that was convened in 1972 to provide a standardized definition. This was to facilitate the collection of population-based data on prevalence of vision impairment and blindness in a uniform and comparable manner. 4 major causes of vision loss have since been identified. These were trachoma, onchocerciasis, xerophthalmia, and cataract. There was no consideration of refractive error as an underlying cause of visual impairment, if not blindness.